So this is a real quick video on what are the means of production, because a lot of times we talk about means of production when we're talking about economics and Marx. So let me go over this real quick. So the means of production, basically it means these are non-human, although it's a little confusing. I'll show you why later. Physical items that are needed to produce economic value. So it's whatever the concrete items are, the physical items, tangible items that are needed to produce economic value. And this could be factories, it could be facilities, it can be the machinery, the tools, also the infrastructure capital that you need, so the financing that you need to start up a business, and the natural capital. And the natural capital is also like resources, so we'll talk about that also in a second. So there's two really broad categories of the means of production. One is the instruments of labor. One is the subjects, or you'll see object of labor. So when we talk about the instruments of labor, what we're really looking at, we're looking at the factory. We need the infrastructure necessary to create the product. So let's say for a cobbler would have tools. Now here's the thing: if you are a cobbler and you own your own tools and you have your own ability to make your own product, then that's a whole different thing. You own the tools, which means though you may not own some of the other means of production. You are the sole individual who makes the tools. Now also we have a factory. So let's say there are 5 cobblers and someone hires them to make shoes, and so they have a factory created. Now the other aspect of that is this is not just the instruments of labor, but we also have to have the infrastructure necessary to distribute the goods. So you have to have vehicles, trains, airplanes, energy, utilities, and education. So I may have to train you before you work in the factory. So that education is part of the instruments of labor under the means of production. Now, this also may include human capital. So these are the people who use the tools to create the product. Now we have subjects or objects of labor, and this is a little bit different. So it may be that I also own the natural resources. So I may own the timber, I may own the coal mine, I may own the land, I may have the land that has the oil, I may have the land that has the water. What about the minerals? I may have the minerals. So if I'm mining gems, I may have the natural resources. Not only do I have the land, but I have, in some instances from a legal perspective, I also own what is beneath the land. Now that's a whole nother level of law, and that we're not going to talk about that, because you can just assume that if I own the property, I also own the whatever's below it, the oil, the coal, the minerals, the water. Now also it indicates the wind. So if I have windmills up and I'm using the wind to produce the energy, I'm using the natural resources that are on my property. So I understand this may be a little confusing. What about raw materials? So we have yarn in a textile mill. Well, here's the thing. The yarn has already been processed, but it is nothing. Yarn is nothing as far as a textile until it is woven into a material. So it may be that I own the sheep that I shear to make the yarn, and I own the textile mill. So I own all, so far, the means of production. Does everybody understand that? So also within that, means of production may also indicate that I have that, because we collude these two together. It may mean that I have the means of distribution, that I own the means of distribution. So let's just take Nike shoe store. They make shoes in factories, but they also have a store. So they have a Nike store in New York, and then they also own Nike.com. So here you have the distribution. You've got a store, you have internet, you have trucks, you probably own rail cars that ship your materials and your goods and services. So this is also how we look at the means of production. So this was very quick. I hope that this helped, and you can, Google it and look it up more if you're a little confused.